If you have the power to make fun of yourself, you'll outlast them all.
Everything is a joke to Jews.
If the world hates you at some point, you know, you kind of internalize that. So, and you either become a boxer or a comic.
The Jews have always used humor to kind of get by because we've been chased out of every country on the planet.
But sometimes that's not racism that's at work. Sometimes it's just honest miscommunication. I was at home the other day, knock on the door. It's a little old lady from downstairs. She's like, I want to invite you guys to Bible study. I was like, well, we're Jewish. Figuring like most people in the world, she's a little anti-Semitic, and we'll get right out of this.
So I just want to be honest with you guys right off the bat. Michelle did introduce me as Emily Epstein, and I want you guys to know that that is just my stage name. My real name is actually Christine Jesus. Because I changed it when I got into comedy, because I heard the Jews do pretty well.
To be a Jewish comedian doesn't mean you had to be Jewish and then a little bit of a comedian. To be a Jewish comedian meant you had to be a great comedian and then be able to come from Jewish life.
We suffered, then we moved. And then we suffered. But if you look at Jewish history, you know, despite it all, we're very creative people and very positive people. And if we wouldn't have been, I don't think we would be here today.
Jewish humor's been around forever, you know what I mean? We've been suffering forever, so we had to joke about it, either joke or cry, and we do both.
Whenever you opened in Vegas, the review would, New York comic or Borscht Belt comic, that was the Jew was in town. That was the underlying way of telling people that a Jew was there.
And Jews like to take the worst case scenario and talk about how miserable they are. But when you listen to them, you can't help but laugh.
Everybody in your class is becoming bar and bat misfit at the same time, and you're all competing. We get ulcers. We have our midlife crisis at 13. Who else does this to their children? I mean, it's 16 in America you can drive. 18, you can vote and smoke. 21, you can drink. 13 years old in Judaism, you're a man. Talk like Mickey Mouse, but you're a man.
Stereotypes were the living definition of what constituted humor at the end of the 19th century.
There's still the stereotypes about how Jews are cheap, how Jews are this and that, you know, thrifty, they like to save money, you know, in the doggy bag thing. So that's still like, isn't that kind of like a negative kind of a thing still?
To me, the funny humor is not sort of when things are going well, it's when things are going badly. And I think that's why, you know, Jews as well as just immigrant groups, minorities, you know, tend to be the good comedians.
It's really this interpersonal, political, making fun of authority, very common, the kind of humor.
Typical is sort of a self-deprecating. Also, usually, you know, you make fun of your relationship with your mom or parents. Things like that is usually what's ascribed to Jewish comedy.
It's really, it gets into the Jewish mindset. We do have a certain way of thinking, a point of view toward the world. Part of it is an outsider status.
I mean, a lot of my humor is making fun of, you know, frustrating aspects of my life or things I don't have control over. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge part of it.
First word that comes to mind is reflexive. The sort of self-referential, self-loathing mixed with what are you going to do about it?
Seinfeld, for example, tapped into a tradition of the very careful observer. This is Talmudic in and of itself. It's going back to that very small point and playing with it and looking it over and flipping it to one side and finding 18 angles to view it from.
But there's one other thing that Jewish humor liked to do based upon the Talmud was it liked wordplay. You get very little slapstick, you know. I mean, there's one of the Three Stooges. But you have this wordplay. The idea that you know a text and I can turn it around and you say, wow, that's funny, the way you did it.
And the Talmud really is just questions that are answered with other questions. And really what is a comedian is someone who stands on the outside and questions.
If you're not somebody who questions authority, it's hard to be funny, I would think, because humor's about busting down expectations. And if you're just right with the program on everything, where's the joke?
If you're going to claim pride over Judaism, which I think people should, part of that is to, you know, what is it, tikkun olam, tzedek, tzedek turdaf, which is to, you know, justice, justice, shalt thou pursue, right? And that means looking out at the world, as Jon Stewart does and Louis Black does, and saying, look, that's wrong, that needs to be fixed. And I think comedy is a very powerful weapon to do that.
This is, anxiety in the family affects everything these people do. I can't go to restaurants with them. We can't order. They talk to waiters and waitresses incessantly, but they'll never order. It's incredible. My wife and I are waiting for my mother-in-law the other day at a restaurant. My wife starts with the waitress. I'll just have a glass of white wine. I'm waiting for my mother. She's 84 years old. She just retired from the Crystal Company. You know, the ones on the left. Of course, do you know that I waited until my mid-40s to get married? I thought I'd marry a musician, and look what I got. Then my mother-in-law shows up. Who can eat? I don't feel so well. How's the salmon? I just had colon surgery. Have you met my son-in-law? He's a comic. I don't think he makes much money.
My mother's in Florida right now for 3 weeks, visiting her friends, playing canasta, mahjong, and like shopping and eating. That is a Jewish woman's multiple orgasm. I'm sorry.
There's an expression that all mothers are Jewish mothers, and meaning that all mothers worry, all mothers are overbearing, but somehow we Jews have become famous for it.
It's just a lot of things people get from their mother, their father, things that were passed down from generation to generation, and just all the experiences we have with everyday life.
Typical Jewish comedian would poke fun of himself or herself and the culture, the Jewish culture, about the meekness of it, the ridiculousness of the fact that they can't lift a hammer and they wouldn't know what to do with it.
Jewish people, at least in New York, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but are sort of over-analytical, a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, definitely a little bit self-deprecating, or a little bit unhappy.
Neurotic and find something to complain about everything, and kind of schizophrenic, kind of spasmodic, never happy, always finding something wrong with the situation, always questioning everything.
I just always found that making jokes about yourself was so much easier to get laughs than making fun of somebody else.
It's observational. It's all about, you know, things that I do in my life, teaching, being single, losing weight, going to the gym, being Jewish versus being Italian. You know, the fact that everyone thinks I'm Italian. I don't know if it's the fact that I always wear black or that I have a mustache, but I'm not. You know what I mean? I don't. So it's, you know, certain things. It's just everyday life things.
That's why we hated the prophets, because they kept giving us, and this is a very important word, they kept giving us a shtuch. Shtuch is a jab, and that's a very important part of Jewish humor, giving a shtuch.
And I think some people are shocked that comedians, when they meet comedians, they aren't clowns and goofy. They're cerebral, and the reason is because we are thinking and we are questioning, and that's what Jews do.
It's a way of diffusing, I think, a way of diffusing sadness and frustration and anger, and a way to bring some sense of pleasure to a life that's filled with all those negative elements.
But a lot of people say the humor is tragedy plus time. You take the tragedy, you give it some time, and you joke about it. And that's what Jews did with their persecutions and their poverty.
The Jews have a sense of humor, a sense of feeling. You know, my father always used the word Tom. I mean, if you understand Yiddish, it's heart. Tom is pathos, is heart. And I think the humor has always been a part of our culture.